Unit 3, Lecture 6, Other Senses. All of the senses we haven't talked about yet wrapped up into one lecture, and this is the last lecture of this unit. Yay! Here are your learning targets. We're going to focus on taste and smell and body senses, but we are going to start off with these. Body senses are also known as somatic senses because remember the word soma from our neuron studies. Soma means body. The first one we're going to focus on is our sense of touch. Touch is considered essential for survival and development. We have evidence of this because we know that babies and premature babies specifically do much better and their health improves a lot faster when they have cuddles or when they are massaged by a human hand as opposed to just kind of like being swaddled. We also know that baby monkeys, when forced to choose between either a furry fake mom and a wire fake mom, they choose that cuddle by that furry fake mom. We'll get into that in our we'll get into both of those concepts in our development unit. But our sense of touch breaks down into 4 types, either pressure, temperature, vibration, or pain. And we know we have 4 types of touch because we have 4 different types of receptor neurons. And each one of these is shaped in a particular way, resulting in one of these sensations. Pain is our body's sense of touch that tells us that something is wrong. It is usually a result of damage to the skin or other tissues. So even if, let's say, you develop a liver infection or your appendix is about to burst, pain does not have to be on the surface. It can be something internal, but it still would indicate something is wrong. The receptor cells for pain are called nociceptors or nociceptors, and they send pain signals to the brain. One reason we know that pain is actually really important is because we know what happens when someone can't experience it. That is called congenital insensitivity to pain. CIP is a disease where a person feels no pain, which of course sounds really great on the surface, but if we can't feel our own injuries, or we have an inability to sweat or notice an infection in our joints, we can't respond to these sensations in our body. If we get injured, if we get cut and we don't get it treated, it could become infected. If we break our arm and we aren't careful with it, it could become permanent or it could heal incorrectly. If we can't sweat, we can overheat and have a stroke. So our body needs to be able to do all of these things. We will talk about this more in class and hear about this young lady's story. There is a theory on how we experience pain called the gate control theory. This is more not so much how we experience it, but this is more how does it go through our body. And our spinal cord contains, according to this theory, neurological gates that either block or allow pain to be sensed. And this is sort of a complicated thing, but I'm going to try my best to explain it simply. So let's say that I slam my finger in my drawer that you can't see. I got a drawer right underneath here. And there are small fibers that will send that sense of pain up to my brain. So those small nerve fibers open up the gate to go up my spinal cord into my brain. If I start rubbing that like, ow, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. Other larger nerve fibers might shut that pain off because it's almost like you're being distracted. We are really distracting ourselves from that pain. And so we don't feel those smaller nerve fibers. This allows you 2 things. First of all, it can distract you from that pain simply to soothe you. And it can also allow you to react to danger first to get out of whatever is causing you pain before you really experience it. So if I had slammed my finger in this drawer, I might kind of go into a little bit of an instant shock, like, oh, I know this is bad, but it doesn't quite hurt yet, but oh, that's bad, before I can actually be calm enough to open up the drawer and take my finger out. This happened to me once when I stapled my finger standing over my German teacher's desk. I'll tell you that story in class, I'm sure. If I don't, feel free to remind me. This is also why if a kid is hurt and you say, well, can I kiss it? If I kissed it, would that make it feel better? They go, mm-hmm. That sensation of the pressure on their hand could distract them, or wherever they got hurt, could distract them from their pain. But how does pain actually get to the brain? Pain in the brain, I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. I don't have a series of steps like I did with hearing and vision, but what I can tell you is that pain goes to the thalamus first, as does all of the other senses we've talked about so far. But then from there, it goes to a couple different areas of the brain. First, it goes to the somatosensory cortex, and this is where we actually sense the literal pain, how intense it is, where it is, what type of pain it is. Is it a cut? Is it a burn? Is it a bruise? That sort of thing. But then at the same time, and also resulting from this process, our limbic system is activated. And that's that emotional, that immediate emotional reaction of, do I need to escape and get to someplace safe? Do I need to cry out for help? Does this make me sad or mad? So we have an emotional reaction. And then together, once those initial reactions have been formed, then that sort of gets moved, I guess, to our prefrontal cortex. Remember, kind of where our personality is. And that is where we have that secondary reaction saying to ourselves, how long is this going to hurt? When will this be over? Is there anything I can do to fix this pain? And what is this pain going to mean for the party I was going to go to later? Is it still going to be there where I can't go to the party? Is this pain, did I smash my hand so much that now I can't grab a ball to throw it at my sports practice later? So kind of the worry about the future. So the more advanced perception of pain. Pain is also considered a biopsychosocial experience. We have our body's actual response to pain, but then we also have a psychological influences. Are we distracted? Are we giving attention to it? Do we know from experience that with an ice pack and some ibuprofen that it will get better, in which case it's not so bad, we just need to get the right treatment, which also hand in hand goes with the expectation of pain relief. If you've gotten hurt in this way before, does that will likely influence, if you have a memory of this pain, that will likely influence your experience of it. And then finally, we have a social cultural influence on pain as well. Is there someone else around to give us empathy? For example, again, think of a little kid who falls down. If they look around and no one's there, chances are they might just brush it off and then feel better. But if they fall down and then they find a loved one or someone who cares about them, they might run on over, and then just when you think they're fine, they might just go, bah! And start crying like crazy. That is because the presence of others has taught them that they will get sympathy and care. If you know what someone else's pain feels like, you could potentially feel it yourself. And then what about the expectation of, should you show your pain? Is it okay to cry? Are you supposed to be tough? Are you supposed to shake it off or rub some dirt in it? So there's some social influences to how we experience pain as well. One last interesting aspect of pain is that it can be felt in body parts that you don't even have anymore. People like, for example, soldiers who have had a leg or, I don't know, an arm amputated, can still feel pain where that missing part used to be. Now, this is not necessarily true for people who are born missing a limb. It's for people that had it and then it went away for whatever reason. Psychologists think that's because of cross-wiring in the sensory cortex. So in other words, if there's activity in the brain near the area that used to receive the sensations from the part that's now missing, it might create a feeling of pain in that missing part. This is a little bit complicated, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about it in class when we can look at this video, but it could also just be our central nervous system firing on nerves that used to be connected to that missing piece, but are still connected to our spinal cord. So again, this is another fascinating situation that we will talk more about in class. Now we're going to move on to two senses that have to do with body position and our ability to move our bodies. The first one is vestibular sense. This is the sense of body orientation with respect to gravity, aka balance. If you remember when I was teaching you about our sense of hearing, I talked about semicircular canals, and it's like three literally semicircular canals that are somewhat above the cochlea. So they're part of the inner ear. And they are filled with cilia, or like little hairs, and fluid. And what happens, here I happen to have a glass of water next to me, is as you tip your head, the fluid in those canals can tip as well. And it activates these cilia, or these little hairs that are on the inner lining, and it indicates to they are receptor cells. So a message gets sent to your brain to say that your head is either up, down, left, right, your head, well, your whole body, quite frankly. Are you tipped to the left? Are you tipped to the right? Are you upside down? And whatnot. And so when those cilia receive that message and it's transduced into a neural message, it gets sent to the cerebellum as well as other parts of your body. So this is your whole sense of self. Then we have your kinesthetic sense, or your kinesthesis sense, the sense of our body's position and movement in regards to each other. So have you ever wondered when you wave hello to someone why you don't smack yourself in the face over and over again? That is because you have a kinesthesis sense. Oh, that kind of hurt. We have a sense of where our body's positions are in regards to each other. So if you think of potentially like touching your nose or putting food into your mouth, your hand-eye coordination is part of this sensation. Here, transduction occurs in proprioceptors, which are another type of receptor cells, in our joints, bones, tendons, and muscles, and it is perceived in the parietal lobe. So the parietal, that P always helps me remember pressure, so it's involved in our sense of touch, and pressure and position. I almost blanked for a second, even though it's right on the screen in front of me. Pressure and position. We'll do a couple demonstrations with this in class as well. And we are cruising right along here. We are setting up for our last two senses, our chemical senses. What makes these under the category of chemical senses is that this sense is based on an actual chemical or a substance entering your body. So not just a frequency wave or something like that, but an actual chemical, whether it's found in food or in an odor, has to enter your body for it to be synthesized? Perceived. I was going to try to manipulate the word sensation, but I'll just stop. Okay, the first one is taste, and I'm sorry if your notes look a little different than this. I made a last minute swap here on how I ordered my notes, but in gustation, food molecules will dissolve in your saliva and it is detected by taste buds. But believe it or not, all of these bumpy things are not your taste buds. They are papillae. Oh, there's my mouse. Papillae. And on each of those, you have little pockets called taste buds or taste pores. And then they have the receptor cells that connect to an afferent nerve. If you remember afferent nerves, we had efferent and afferent. Afferent are your sensory nerves. So this is just another type of sensory nerve. Some interesting little trivia. You have over 200 taste buds on your tongue, papillae on your tongue, and then there's 50 to 100 receptor cells on each pore. Also kind of trivia, I guess, is that your sense of taste will degenerate with age. It kind of becomes less refined. However, the good news is, in the immediate sense, if you scratch your tongue or crack your tongue because you eat too many salt and vinegar chips, yum, or maybe you burn it because you can't wait for that pizza and then, oh, you should have waited to eat that pizza, your taste buds will regenerate within 1 to 2 weeks of being damaged. Okay, so as I was saying, those taste buds connect to receptor cells, and those receptor cells go to your afferent nerve, and those are sending messages into your brain. So it goes to where? The thalamus, and then to your temporal lobe. So your temporal lobe does not just receive your auditory stimulation, it also receives your gustation sensation. It is near, this pathway is also near the olfactory area, which is a fancy way of saying your sense of smell. So we'll talk about this more in a second. And then we might have a sensory interaction. So I'm sure you know that both taste and smell are connected. And I will talk more about that after I talk about smell. There are people that are super tasters. So these are people that have more papillae than your average person. In other words, more taste buds on their tongue. These people have very low thresholds for taste, meaning it doesn't take much for someone to really detect that sweetness or that sourness. And this is a very large picture of a tongue, but this blue ink brings it to attention how many taste buds someone has. Oh, and I should say that 1 in 4 people are super tasters, but that there are also people who are non-tasters, which means that they have very few taste buds and don't taste food very well at all. Now I'm going to talk about a few specific tastes that our body craves for specific reasons. So I gave you those reasons on your notes, but it would also be a good idea to jot down examples. So traditionally our body craves 4 different things. First of all, sweetness, because we know that sugar gives us energy. Sour, because it also, evolutionarily speaking, we know that a sour taste indicates a potentially toxic acid. We crave salty because we know that salt is part of our physiological processes. And so if our body is low in salt, specifically after we just sweat a whole lot, we might crave that salty taste. Bitter is another indicator of a potentially toxic or poisonous substance, although, some of us still like it and are addicted to coffee. But then we also have umami. This is something that is considered a savory taste, maybe described as like a broth or a meat-based taste, and it is supposed to be an indication that our body needs proteins to help grow and repair tissue. So that's why we have a craving for meat sometimes. And then this is a tricky one, astringent. This one's kind of the newest one on the list. It puckers the mouth and numbs the tongue and constricts the throat. And I don't have a lot of really good information on this. It's yet to be on AP test, but it has started to come up more and more. And it is present. Here are your examples: in pomegranates, cranberries, burnt and smoked food. So there you go. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think I gave you examples for umami. These tend to be in fermented and aged products like cheese, fish sauce, soy sauce, mushrooms, spinach, and green tea. So that was for umami. All right, our last sense, olfaction. Think of old factories smelling bad. That might help you with this. How does smell reach the brain? Our odor molecules that are in the air will come into our nose and dissolve in the mucous membrane or the epithelium of our nose. It is transduced by olfactory receptor cells. Again, we have more cilia, these little hairs that are just kind of hanging out in our nasal passages. And then this immediately goes to the brain. It does not go to the thalamus, which I think I have on the next slide. We have roughly 5 million receptors in our nose. They regenerate about once a month, so if they get damaged, they will come back. And humans have the ability to detect about 10,000 odors. There's an interesting thing. So the neural message goes to the olfactory bulb area of the temporal lobe. Again, same area. Notice same area as our sense of taste, and it bypasses the thalamus. I don't have a good reason why. I just know it does. This area also goes near our limbic system, which is where memories are made, which is why when you smell like that type of chocolate chip cookie or popcorn or that favorite dish that your mom makes, you might think of, oh, that just smells like Christmas, or oh, that smells like my birthday. So smell is associated with memory. Kind of an extra bullet point here. Attractive smells, that should be are learned. So you are not born knowing what smells good and what smells bad. You actually have to, you gain that with experience. It's also important to note that your smell pathway goes right above your mouth. So that's another reason why your sense of taste and smell interact. Which brings me to the concept of sensory interaction. This is when one sense affects another. So it actually influences, one sense can influence the sensations of another. Flavor is a really good example of this. We all know that when we have a cold, our food might not taste as good. That is because our sense of taste is influenced by our sense of smell, which is influenced by our sense of touch and the texture or temperature of our food, and how our food looks. So if you think of what a strawberry tastes like and how it smells and how it might feel and how it might look, and in its best form, that's going to make us think, man, we like the flavor of strawberry. But some people have texture issues with certain foods, and we certainly know if food looks funny, we might not want to eat it. So all of these things interact together to result in the flavor of something. And then one last term that I mentioned mostly because people ask about it is synesthesia. Words are hard for me. This is when one sensation produces another. So smelling mint might make you feel like you're tasting mint. I'll teach you about this McGurk effect, which is the idea that you can not only hear a sound, but you can see a sound. We'll do a little demonstration in class. But some other people believe that certain words have color. When you see them on a screen or on a page, that they actually kind of have a glow about them. Also, possibly hearing a faint firecracker could make you smell gunpowder, perhaps. And some people say if you hold your nose and close your eyes and you bite into a potato, you could convince yourself that's an apple. So this is a little bit of a tricky term. We'll talk about it more in class, but Unit 3, done.